the cancer and the fight with cancer that began 7 years ago, this coming March, with surgery out in Vail, Colorado, and some follow-up chemotherapy, and followed by lymphoma, followed up by chemotherapy. That 2-year ordeal was the beginning of me knowing that I have some serious health problem, that I just tooling along, expecting to make life plans like always, and all of a sudden knowing that maybe my days were numbered. I remember just thinking, well, you got to live in the present moment. I learned that very much from the Focolare ideal, movement of spirituality. Got to live in the present moment. You have to embrace Jesus forsaken in the trials of the day. So basically I was at peace, and you never really think of this as one of the challenges of how do you choose your treatment as an after fact to the cancer. And of course people come out of the woodwork with suggestions on the best way to do it. What's the best diet? What's the alternative medicine only, traditional medicine only? And then I realized I really needed again to live in the present moment and to really want what God wants. So that's what I did. Whatever I believed I was getting directions from the Lord to do, that was my choice of treatment. And
in order to determine that, did you pray pretty regularly for that kind of discernment, or?
Yeah, I had developed a daily discernment, trying to find God's will in the present moment throughout the day, and that just gave me a lot of peace, and that just gave me no regrets. This is God's will at the present moment. Certainly dealing with losses, but and a change of life, a change of attitude toward life, that no longer kind of glibly assuming I can make 5-year plans, 10-year plans with my life, but now it was 1-year plans and basically a daily plan.
You mentioned a couple of things that I wanted to emphasize just a little bit. You've been a priest quite some time, and you've done many different things as a priest, but that just didn't happen by accident. Can you talk a little bit about your background? I know you grew up in Wentzville, a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I came from a very nurturing family with close bonds. We worked together, played together, prayed together, and had the opportunity where, as Dad made farming a second career, I got to work a lot on the farm, be outdoors with nature, close to God. And
I was happy to know both your parents, and in many ways they were very spiritual people, but very different too. I would think of your mother as more outgoing.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad, one person described your dad as a fellow that would think before he spoke, then he would think again,
Yeah.
and then he wouldn't speak.
Yeah.
How have they influenced you?
Well, probably the mom was more the socialite that enjoyed people and influenced me, and finding church fun. We lived on the same block with the church, so involved in church activities from an early age was fun. I picked that up from my mother. From my father, to be conscientious in what you do, to be fair, to be aware of the little guy, to not just mix with those you're most comfortable, but to be going out of your way to be friends with people of other faiths, people of other cultures, and be a handyman. If you can find a way to fix it yourself, use your head and try and figure it out. He was
Some
inventive
independence.
that way, yeah.
And you had brothers and sisters, and somewhere along the line you got the feeling that you were being called to the priesthood. What brought that on, you know?
Yeah, I always describe mine as an early call and I'm giving God a long time to take it back. So probably the middle, junior high age and around 7th grade and in grade school is where I really felt the call.
Was there any one event or person that kind of put the thought there?
No, just the general vocation calls that if you have ordinary health, if you have average intelligence, if you have an interest in a vocation, then you probably have a religious vocation. And
You bought that, huh?
I couldn't eliminate myself from the list, so that always kind of haunted me. I didn't feel ready to enter the seminary at high school level, but at college then I says, well, it's time to decide or not to decide. So
So you actually were thinking about it for a while before you
yeah,
entered the college.
yeah, every annual retreat and in high school I'd think about it again. And then in the senior year I decided I'd enter,
Okay.
give it a try.
You went to Cardinal Glennon College right here in St. Louis, and then
Mm.
eventually to Kenrick Seminary and
In St. Louis U.
St. Louis U School of Divinity.
Got a graduate degree in guidance and counseling at UMSL.
Okay. I understand your entire family is somewhat tainted with religion. You've got an older brother who's a priest.
Yes, Don. Joyce, a year ahead of me, is the precious blood religious nun. And Carol, the oldest girl, has always loved to be involved in church. Same with Leroy, the second oldest boy.
I've known all of these people, and they're just fine examples of good Christian men and women and their families. But you had a tough thing happen in this last year with your younger brother, Tom.
Yeah, he picked up cancer 3 years ago. In fact, when I found mine had metastasized to the liver, he found out he had lung cancer for the first time. He was out in Santa Barbara, California. So he overcame the odds, really. I don't think they expected him to live longer than a year. But he made it through 2 summers.
And he came back here so he could be with family, and family could surround him with care
Yeah.
and love.
Yeah, he just, it was too expensive to live out there on a health income only.
It may have been just my thinking, but it seemed to me that in some ways, because he was your younger brother, and I know you love all your brothers and sisters, his illness and his death was almost more difficult for you to accept than your own illness.
Yeah, and his death was more difficult than accepting my parents' death. Strange thing, I was kind of surprised the ties were that deep, but they really were. But I learned then the strengths that we'd received from our family, because the 5 of us other siblings gathered together to figure out how we can respond to him, stay overnight if necessary at his house, and then be with him. And as decisions were made, to come together on it rather easily, what we thought was a consensus of what we wanted to do, and to just be there at his side and give him love. None of them trying to talk him into doing something what's best for him, or but just to be willing to be there to love him. And that impressed me. That we are blessed with a family that knows how to love.
And what impressed me too, and I knew Tom, and he was, I thought, a great guy, and he was quite an athlete, a skier, and he loved the outdoors, and had a real spiritual side, but he wasn't really a church-going person, and yet that didn't seem to make any difference to the family.
No, we each took our turn, I guess 25 years earlier, doing what we thought was setting him straight. He must not be thinking right, so we'll just give him some right thinking and he'll join us in the church. But he was a real philosophical guy, so what he saw as the best way for him did not include church. And he had a spiritual guy, well revered by friends and business acquaintances, both in Colorado and Santa Barbara, California.
He touched a lot of people's lives, it seemed to me.
He did. He
And
touched our lives just with his love of nature, his care to take care of nature and use.
I remember one time we went skiing together, and he said, "I like it out here. I think I'm going to come out." He went out to Colorado and ended up getting on the ski patrol.
Yes, he did. So he had about 12 years in Colorado and about 20 years in Santa Barbara, California.
The other thing I had to smile was at his funeral mass, and here's a fellow that again, I believe too, was very spiritual and close to God. But this funeral mass, he had 2 bishops, at least a dozen priests, 15 or 20 nuns.
Yeah.
It was one of the most religious attended.
He was waked in church.
And he was waked in church because the local funeral parlor was already busy.
Yeah.
So the Lord has a way of bringing us home.
But he had his canoe paddles sticking straight up there out of the coffin. Let everybody know that that was really where he was heading to, to do something outdoors.
I guess I'm dwelling on Tom a little bit because there might be people watching this that have relatives that are not active in their church as they are, and they feel bad about it. But I think the key, what I saw, is the continuing care and prayer and surrounding people with love. And in the long run, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, you just can't improve on that. Nature takes its course. We're in God's hands, but having people around that love you and support you is the best kind of support you can receive.
You'll hear people say, it gets me so angry when a young child dies or when a good person gets sick. And how could a loving God let this type of thing happen? It's almost the reason they give why they can't believe there's a God. And yet I've never known you that you didn't, believe that these things are all for the best, even though right now they don't feel particularly good physically and maybe even at times spiritually.
Yeah, I think whatever hand we're dealt with, we're also dealt with sufficient grace to live it out with grace and with peace. And And you never can project on that. You never know how you'll react when a trial comes. But I've certainly found that grace when it's come time to me to face a trial, and to have a pretty continuous peace because of that. That God is within it, that there's a power of prayer within it in offering it up, and that it's very formative.
How do you do that? How do you pray when you really don't know what your immediate future is going to be? What do you do?
Yeah, it's probably the third time I'm saying this, that such a key ingredient is living in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the peace is, and that's where the grace is. And when I take myself out of the present moment, I'm on my own. But when I'm in that present moment, that's where God is, and that's where the grace to live for that moment is. And then just to discover the formation that's in it, the intimacy that happens with family and friends because of serious illness, the beautiful heroes that you run into over at the lab where you're getting the infusions of a chemotherapy, unsung heroes, but people of great courage.
What do you say to people or what would you say to someone who has a friend who's seriously ill, and they want to visit and they want to be there for them, but they feel really uncomfortable? What would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, just be there. Say, and be honest. I don't know what to say, but I care for you. I love you. I just want to be here. And that's a great gift. That's a great gift. And to do nothing is a deprivation. You deprive yourself. You deprive the other person.
Mm-hmm.
All because of feeling awkward.
Mm.
And
so you don't have to have the words, just
yeah. The best things we offer people really come from our awkwardness.
Mm-hmm.
That's where people struggle, is what we hold deepest and most in common as human beings. And so to be willing to offer that is where we connect the deepest.
Right above your head over here is a picture of Jesus with the thorns, anticipating the final act of love, his going through his passion and his death. Is that the image that you have in mind when you say Christ forsaken, or is there something else that you think of?
Yeah, it's not so much an image as such as it is an awareness that Jesus is there in that suffering. That when I embrace my sleepless night, when I embrace somewhat tedious day, when I embrace the limits of what I can do, I have to say this is the end of something else of my ministry that I can do because I no longer have the strength. It's not bearing up under the burden. It's not bearing the cross. It's not an act of mine at all. It's a relationship. So, Jesus, I embrace you forsaken in this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of indifferent and unnamed, but the Jesus, I embrace you in it. It personalizes and it becomes Jesus there, and so it's not alone.
So in that
Jesus
relationship is where the strength comes from.
Right.
And would you say this came out of your experience from the Focolare movement, or is that just part of it?
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about that Focolare group?
Yeah, Chiara Lubick founded the Focolare movement. She's 87 now and is seems like she's close to dying, but she's still the head of the movement.
It started right before World War II.
In Turin. And so she just had some great gifts, and she gathered these young women around her there in Turin, and as the bombs came through from the Allied, they would go to the bomb shelters, and she and these girls would take care of the other people, make sure they were getting things, and that they thought that they were doing their best to carry out the gospel. Well, that type of intense but intimate setting made them turn to the gospel a lot and found some real key phrases on what they thought the Lord was calling them to live. And ultimately it was to live unity and to help build a world of unity. And then
To bring more peace to the world as a whole, then, it sounds like.
just to bring unity, to carry out this passage of the Lord as radically as they could. Father, may they all be one as you and I are one, that the world may come to know.
And so now they have priests and a number of other people who are involved?
Yeah, over the years, men got involved, and then religious got involved, and they had a branch for each one. There's a core of people, thousands, who profess to be full-time Folklorino and have their vows that they take. And then there's these branches of married couples, of priests, of religious men, religious women, youth, parish movement, and then it has even branched out in the last 20 years into what they call the inundation. So the different fields of science and politics and philosophy, theology in the world, that they gather experts, well-educated people from those areas and reflect upon how does this spirituality affect this discipline that we're living. So they have politicians in Italy that gather to talk about how does brotherhood become the one common demand on all of us over all partisan issues. And so it has a profound impact in changing people's lives in many ways toward this goal of living unity. They have an economy of sharing where companies dedicate themselves to this ideal of using 1/3 of their profits for charity, for those in need in the movement, 1/3 for the company's growth, and 1/3 for promoting this idea of the economy of sharing.
It seems like you've been involved since the 1970s with this organization,
Right.
and it's been a real strength in your priesthood.
Yeah, it really has. So that's been an important support in this, because the people just don't dance around the issue at all that I'm dying. They say, thank you for accepting this Jesus forsaken, and that and all the graces you're getting for people through this, and that really walk with you.
And they've actually come down, I understand, from Chicago here to St. Louis to visit.
Yeah, twice in the past 2 weeks.
That's neat.
So they go out of their way to live what they practice. They practice what they preach.
A couple of weeks ago, I know a pastoral friend of yours, a former pastor, asked you, is there anything that you wish you would have been able to do? Anything you left undone? And you had a response to that.
Well, I said, no, I've done it. When I got this reprieve 2 years ago, was similar circumstances. Thought I'd be dying within months.
I want to interject there. I was around when that was going on, and we all thought you were going to die.
Yeah.
And you basically at that point thought you were too.
Yeah. So doctors can't explain it, but I bounced back and had good strength. I continued treatment, but I was able to travel. Got to go to Medjugorje and make a pilgrimage there. We had a cruise pilgrimage.
I want to talk about that.
Western Caribbean.